All right, President Trump and War Secretary Pete Hegseth not backing down on their approach to narco-terrorism as they defend strikes on alleged drug boats.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us live from Washington with the latest. Lucas.
Well, good early morning, Carly and Todd. There did not appear to be any daylight between President Trump and his Secretary of War at a cabinet meeting at the White House yesterday over strikes against alleged drug boats, including the first one on September 2nd off the coast of Trinidad, killing all 11 on board, but not all at once. A follow-on strike was ordered to destroy the boat and the remaining suspected drug traffickers. Hegseth defended Navy SEAL Admiral Mitch Bradley, who was the head of the Joint Special Operations Command at the time of that first strike.
Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back.
I want those boats taken out. And if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea. We're saving hundreds of thousands of lives with those pinpoint attacks.
The Trump administration blames Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro, for sending drugs to American shores. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the previous administration left them a mess.
The Maduro regime is not a legitimate government. What it is a transshipment organization. The Biden administration made a deal with Maduro. Maduro asked that his nephews, convicted drug traffickers, be released from U.S. prisons. He asked that his chief money launderer, his money man, his bag man, be released from U.S. custody before he stood trial. In exchange, he promised to hold free and fair elections. He got the nephews back, the drug dealers. He got the bag man back, and he never did the free and fair elections.
He stole the elections.
They stole the elections. Yeah. They suckered Joe Biden. They're not going to sucker Donald Trump.
Now, some see this as a showdown between Trump and Maduro and say there can only be one winner. Carly, Todd.
Lucas Tomlinson live for us this morning. Lucas, thank you. With that, let us bring in Manhattan Institute fellow and someone who grew up in Venezuela but left, Daniel Martino. Daniel, you heard it right there. Pete Hegseth and the administration not backing down. In fact, they are doubling, tripling down on this mission, on this strike. Your reaction to what you just heard?
Well, that I'm very happy to hear that the administration is not going to apologize for defending the United States and for standing up against a regime that has been exporting drugs to the United States for at least 20 years. You know, it's not okay to allow a country that is just 3 hours away from Miami to go from exporting oil and welcoming immigrants to expelling people and now exporting drugs to the United States, which is really the fact of what's going on.
Should this put to bed the controversy surrounding this strike? I mean, you heard calls yesterday and in the previous 48 hours for congressional investigations, potential war crime accusations. Should this put an end to all that?
Look, I think that this is just the excuse to try to go after people who worked for President Trump. The reality is that there have been over 10,000 drone strikes all over the world by the U.S. government just in the 21st century. Are we going to judge the military during Obama for war crimes because of drone strikes in Sudan or Somalia that were not authorized in some sort of specific authorization because it's all part of the war on terror? You know, I think a lot of people could go to prison if we start applying that standard, and I don't think it would be fair or wise in a foreign policy to do that to Secretary Hegseth.
Like I mentioned off the top, you grew up in Venezuela, then you left. You are not allowed back by the Maduro regime because obviously you've been forceful in speaking out against them on our airways and in other airways. But what should the Trump administration do next when it comes to Nicolas Maduro and his regime?
Yeah, I think President Trump has hinted at it already, and that is that the land needs to be next. You see, it is not a separate organization, Maduro and the drug cartels. Maduro is the drug kingpin. The military are the drug exporters. And unless the president takes out those kingpins, which is much better than going after the small ones in the boats, take out the leadership in Venezuela, that's the only way in which we're going to stop Venezuela from being a drug trafficking nation and instead actually make it an ally like it used to be. Venezuela used to be prosperous. We didn't used to leave. My family immigrated, in fact, to Venezuela in the 50s because it was such a beautiful, democratic, prosperous place. And we can have all of that again if President Trump continues on this path.
Okay, so you mentioned potential land activity, if you will. What is the state of the Venezuelan military to go up against whatever forces? And again, I want to be very, very vague in the language I use because we do not yet know what kind of forces will be in Venezuela going up against the Maduro regime. But what is the Maduro regime military like? Do they have any chance against any American or American-backed forces?
Yeah, they only have experience torturing civilians that are unarmed. They have had zero combat experience throughout its whole history. Every experienced law enforcement member left that didn't want to violate human rights. And so they actually have a very elderly, very low recruitment. I don't know if you ever saw that video from a few years ago where a drone, a makeup drone, was made by some civilians to try to assassinate Maduro. It exploded in the sky, and all the military parade members, all they did was run away, because these are people who are just paid there. They're part of the military because they want to eat, they want to get their bread, but they don't want to defend Maduro. Nobody does. They just want to make money and leave. And that's the reality for most Venezuelans. They just want to have their country back. 90% of Venezuelans oppose the Maduro regime. The only reason they're in power is because they have the weapons and they're facing an unarmed population.
Understood. Daniel Martino, really interesting insight, important insight here on a Wednesday morning.